most convincing case I've ever heard for why real life may actually just be a simulation was not from The Matrix, but from Futurama. Let me explain. In the latest episode of Futurama, the professor creates a simulation of their entire universe, and eventually he's able to make it so close to their own reality that, naturally, the crew begins to care for their simulated counterparts and question whether or not they're in a simulation too. The professor quickly shuts down this idea, stating that it's preposterous. But in response, the crew brings up three increasingly compelling points that I've never heard before regarding simulation theory. Point number one, the professor asks, how could anyone care for any kind of artificial intelligence knowing at its core it's nothing more than a bunch of zeros and ones? And to counter that, Leela brings up that we're nothing more than a bunch of atoms, and yet together we are more. Like zeros and ones, atoms don't have consciousness. They can't think on their own. But yet the things that make us conscious human beings are quite literally only made up of atoms. So are atoms really that different than zeros and ones? And if that's the excuse for being unfeeling towards AI, should we also be unfeeling toward each other? Point two, the professor states it would be computationally impossible to run a simulation at our universe's scale, because it would not be possible to keep track of where everything is. Admitting his simulation can't even do this because it requires too much computing power. However, Amy protests that limitation also exists in real life with quantum mechanics, which is actually true. The more we know about how a particle is moving, the less we know about where it actually is, and vice versa. It's called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which, using the professor's terms, is like a limitation on our universe's computing power. And the last point, which in my opinion is the most compelling. The professor states that every movement of every atom gravitationally affects all other atoms in the universe, which again is true. But no software could possibly compute that. So to work around that, he had to make the information of those little effects travel outward at a fixed speed, instead of all those reactions happening at once. However, Amy points out again that we have that limitation in our universe as well. Information of any kind you can think of, even gravity, is confined by the speed of light. So for example, if the sun were to disappear right now, there would be absolutely no way for us to tell for over 8 minutes. This means even our real universe cannot compute things instantaneously. There's some sort of limit to things affecting one another that we don't quite understand.